Now I'll go ahead and call the roll. Mary Anabody,
Present.
Dick Croner,
Present.
Danielle Angeleri,
Present.
Linda Sandquist,
Present.
Dr. Giardini,
Present.
Dr. Gorski,
Present.
Dr. Morris,
Present.
Dr. Copeland,
Present.
Wendy,
Present.
Jay Ware, and we have Attorney Paul Carpenter here.
Correct, yes. Hi.
You know what? I'm gonna call Jay on my phone. So at least he can be here.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Oh, yay. Okay.
And we have Jay Ware. All
Almost.
right. So as we go throughout the meeting, I'm gonna try to do it so we have less confusion. So everybody just don't talk out at once. If you need to speak, just raise your hand or give a nod or something, and I'll call on you to speak. And if we could have everybody mute your monitor until it's time to speak, and that way we keep some of the background noise out now. So we didn't receive any public comment from anybody, so no one's here to do a public comment. So right now, this meeting is mostly discussion meeting, so the scope of services and what we discussed last meeting. So did anybody want to add to or comment about what we talked about last meeting? I'll go ahead with Dick.
Tim, what about minutes? I submitted a set of minutes for our last meeting. Do we need to do anything formally with those at the beginning of this meeting?
Did everybody get them?
I did not I sent them to you. I did not distribute them.
Okay, I didn't remember sending them out, so we could vote on them we'll lay them over the approval of the minutes from last meeting to the next meeting.
Okay. All right, that's a motion.
Anybody else? And second that?
Second.
Thank you.
All right. Second by who?
Giardini.
Okay. So it's been motion and second to lay over the approval of the minutes for the last meeting to next meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed have the same right. All right, it's been motion and approved that we approve the minutes from last meeting to on next meeting. So who wants to lead the discussion from last meeting and where we want to continue on? Mary Ann, yeah, any new ideas? You're muted still.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm going to raise my hand mainly because I guess I've been working on the bylaws and thinking a fair amount about some of the challenges that we have in constituting this new organization. I think the bylaws that I submitted to everybody to look at as an example are just a starting place. But I think perhaps we need to consider an executive team, creating an executive team so that the executive team can sit down and go through the minutes and try and incorporate the suggestions of the entire board into a more coherent document. Because while I think these are adequate, I don't think they necessarily fulfill all our needs. So I guess I'm proposing that we discuss the election of a board who would then take us in the next direction of how to create ourselves as an actual organization.
So with that, we will have to develop our board first, and we were discussing on how we wanted to develop that board last meeting. That's why we had the blurbs and the resumes filled out so we could structure the board and actually figure out exactly how we want that board to look, as a president, a chairman, vice chairman, secretary, treasurer, or how do we want just one president, one secretary? So anybody have any ideas on how they want that board to look?
Okay,
All right,
I
Mary Ann.
personally, I think obviously we need a chairman, we need a vice chairman, because if the
We have
chairman
to
is,
have
pardon me?
we have to have a chairman and a secretary. That's the main two that we have to have.
Okay, but at the same time, given I think that, if for any reason the president or the chairman, whatever, is unable to attend a meeting or be present, someone's going to have to step in. And I think it's in for continuity's sake going forward. If you looked at Stevenson County bylaws, they indicated they had a president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. And to me, that's just kind of a basic complementary group that could fulfill, like right now, the most critical jobs. So that's what I would recommend.
And long-term, I think something to contemplate is the idea that the vice president would provide some continuity of leadership over time. So while the positions might only be for a year or 18 months or 2 years or whatever the board decides, there would be maybe some carryover from the vice presidency to the presidency, not a requirement, but something to make sure that we have stability as the membership of the board changes, so that we don't lose the thread of what the board is doing. So
I agree with that, especially because of the fact that we're so new. This is such a new model for Winnebago County. This particular board is overseeing obviously all the mental health services and substance abuse services in gaps in the community. And it would be really a shame to have all this work done and then not have the continuity going forward. So I think it's just kind of a built-in security for all of us.
May I say something?
Go ahead.
Mary Ann, in reference to the Stevenson County, under Article 6, Section 1, it does say, and this might be something we're talking about continuity, and this is what I like to kind of expound upon, that officer, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, shall not serve for a period of 1 year, and they cannot serve any longer than 3 consecutive. With that said, I guess when I was reading this, my thought was, obviously, as you said, Mary Ann, I totally agree. This is all new, especially to me, that maybe this is something that we want to keep continuity for a period of time, more than just a year. Maybe it should be 2 years while we get our feet wet. If we're only going to meet 4 times a year, give or take, I think there should be some more continuity to that. Now, I stand corrected if anybody else wants to chime in on that, but that's how I read it, and that's how I was going to interpret it, that whoever is going to be the president, vice president, so forth, should be at least 2 terms. And I only say that for the reason of the continuity of keeping it on a plane that we can all understand. Just a thought.
That sounds good to me too.
I would agree with that. You don't want anything less than a 2-year term.
Yeah.
For all those reasons that were described.
all right, so we can edit that. I also think the term should be consistent with the fiscal year. Just an idea.
Sure. It'll work. That works.
And should we have our fiscal year should be consistent with the county's fiscal year, correct?
Right. We've got people that are wanting to be called on here, I see.
I had a question.
Okay, Linda, go ahead.
Yeah. So just for clarification's sake, none of us have prescribed terms right now. Is that correct?
No.
So like
It's just-
I
say
No.
could
that
be on
again.
ever, or I could be on here for 1 year, right? I mean, I'm just
So
asking.
there were prescribed terms when you were nominated. there were-
Oh,
Right, yeah, if you look back, like I have a 4-year term. I don't know, and I don't know what anybody else has. I just know that that was the slot that I filled.
okay, because I think that's important to know then as we consider this. And my assumption is, Mary Ann, I think it's really important, obviously, that we stagger because we don't want everybody coming on or going off at once, obviously. But I'm just thinking, we're all in this together. We're all putting this together.
Mhm.
Let's look at those terms, because to me, it seems like, I guess I would speak for myself. I would be very disappointed to serve 1 year and then to be off when I'm kind of laying the groundwork for it. And I guess I'm hoping that everybody would feel that same way.
Yes.
I agree.
So I'm just saying, I think along with the officers and what their terms are, I would like to look at what everybody's terms are and see how we set those up again, so that there's continuity, but also so that there's a staggering of people going off and coming on.
Paul,
I
is that
like-
something?
I wanted to ask Paul about that. I mean, how did terms get set? I'm not even certain of that.
So when everybody was appointed, they should have been appointed for a period. It should have been specified how long they were appointed for. And the statute says that the terms are normally 4 years, but at the beginning, 2 shall be appointed for a term of 2 years, 2 for a term of 3 years, and 3 for a term of 4 years. And I assume that the 2 additional would be 4 years also. So that totaled 7, and then the 2 others would be 4 years also. So I don't know if anybody was told that they were appointed for a 2-year term or a 3-year term or a 4-year term, but they should have been.
Do you know who has that information?
Chairman Haney has that information. Someone had to ask him with those.
Okay.
It was written somewhere, Tim. I can't remember. I saw it written. I even think somebody had a 1-year term. Maybe that's incorrect, Paul, but
No, it's 3.
Bill Gorski was saying you have a 2-year term. Is that correct? 2-year.
That's what I was told by the chairman,
Right.
my recollection.
I think mine is for 2 years.
Who said that?
Dick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I have a question about about the officer situation? Do I recall a email or a suggestion earlier that there also would be subcommittees of the board?
Yes.
And that's after we develop the board.
As you develop officers and subcommittees, you look, I would assume, at the entire number of people on the board to distribute what needs to be done in its totality. And I just don't remember I saw something about committees with maybe some names to them, but I don't recall what it was.
Well,
There
I
was no
think
name.
the bylaws that we're looking at today for Stevenson County, the framework, it does speak to the fact that the chairman will appoint committees.
But, or get into that, I think he was talking about at the last meeting, we were going to discuss having an executive committee and Dick, what was the other one?
Clinical.
Clinical,
A clinical
Yes.
committee.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, so one was to continue to work on the board structure. And the second one was to begin to look at the environmental scan through the use of the CSS, through the use of the community support system. That was just put out there, okay, for discussion.
So the main thing, go ahead, Dr. Copeland.
So if I may, just so that we could be a little more efficient. I know in the agenda that was sent out, we said we're going to deal with scope of services and then structure of the board. To me, it would seem most appropriate right now if we could just go ahead and at least get the fundamental or the necessary components of the executive committee together and then task them to start working on some of these other things, because we can talk for another 30 minutes here and really not ever get to any action.
Right.
But if we can at least get the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, whatever we decide,
Right.
then they can start filling in some of these other things and we can keep the ball moving.
I agree with that.
Agree.
I agree with that.
I would like to nominate Mary Ann to be the chair or the president, whichever title we use.
For the whole board?
Yes,
Okay.
I would
Who'd like
second that.
yeah.
Before we get too far on that, we can't vote on that today because it's not on the agenda to vote on that.
Right, because we were all,
It's not in structure.
I have a question, and I certainly am not contradicting Dr. Copeland. So Dr. Copeland, please don't think that I am. But I guess we have a kind of a chicken and an egg problem here.
Yes.
To me, it seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. And again, and this is not directed at Mary Ann by any means either, but it seems to me that we're putting the cart before the horse to elect officers before we have bylaws. And I apologize for missing the last meeting, but my suggestion would be that we have a small committee, and certainly Mary Ann could lead it, of 3 people who put together bylaws and then come back to our next meeting so we could vote on the bylaws, and then we could also vote on the officers. It seems to me like this is a lot of people kind of stirring the stew, where if we had 3 people who decided that they wanted to write the bylaws, then the other things would follow.
Linda, what you missed at the last meeting is that there is a Paul Carpenter from the state's attorney's office and Wendy Larson were charged with just that, kind of getting the bylaws. So that's why we got the framework today. And, certainly this is just a framework. We have so much work to do to finesse this and customize the bylaws. Also, in having the privilege of talking to Scott Block of McHenry, who's the executive director over there, he was able to share all of the bylaws, and Wendy would have had those today. She said that she doesn't have a secretary anymore, so it made it difficult. But I think that, that's being worked on, right now. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We've got some wonderful bylaws that we can, copy and paste. I guess that's what I would want to say. So, we're not voting on officers today, but I do think it's important. People in their blurb let us know who's interested, who wants to move forward. And I think that is important, that we start, the community has some expectations, and we want to be able to develop a website with the help of the county, hopefully, get some information out to the public. We need to let people behind the scenes know that there's a lot of work going on every day. So I think if we don't start showing leadership and expressing, that the board is actually doing something, they've chosen their leaders or whatever it is. And this has nothing to do with who gets chosen. It's just that I feel like we've already had 2 meetings. This is our 3rd, and we haven't gone anywhere yet. We haven't done anything yet. So go ahead, Wendy.
I think we have some unique talents on this board, and Ed Copeland, I know, has just surrendered a position as a treasurer. on was it the airport board? And I think that somebody, and I guess I'd like to nominate him for the treasurer's position. I think this is going to be an extraordinarily important job because of the way the ordinances are drafted. There's going to be a lot of complexity. I'd very much like to see Dr. Copeland accept a position like that to help get this mental health board operating properly.
So, Paul, help me if, so we didn't have the executive committee and the clinical committee on the agenda this week. So can I still appoint people to be on the executive committee and the clinical committee?
Well, there's a couple issues on that, I guess, just so if it's an official committee, it's going to be that's going to be subject to Open Meetings Act also. So just keeping that in mind. And I guess.
So we could still have an unofficial meeting, say, have 2 board members and then have Wendy on the committee.
Right.
So that's an unofficial meeting. Those 2 board members could draw up the bylaws for us.
Right, and I don't want to make it sound like we're trying to go around the law, but yes, that would comply with.
But it's just easier to get it done.
Right.
Yeah, we're just trying to get this, and down the road, we can, like in 2 meetings, we can fix the mistakes, you know, but I feel like we need to get rolling here.
I think that, to Mary Ann's point, I think that we need to keep moving as well. And maybe we put the nominations of the people on the table and come back in a short period of time to do that vote and to get our structure going and to have those bylaws, I don't know, voted on. If we have people nominated, that could be our informal committee until we come back, possibly, if they're interested, and then vote on the officers and the bylaws right away and start moving forward. I agree that we could keep talking about this forever, and I think that there's a lot of structures. I've read the couple of different ones that came in that Wendy shared with us on bylaws. They're pretty straightforward for any type of a board. So I think it's just putting that in place and then going from there.
So is there anybody willing to write up some bylaws before next meeting?
Yeah, I'm willing.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
To work on that.
I was trying to see if there was anyone willing to write up bylaws before next meeting.
Yes, I would.
So
And
I
I
saw
see,
Mary Ann
Ed,
and-
are you on
Right.
board?
So I saw Mary Ann volunteer and Dick volunteer. So
And Dick,
yeah,
okay,
Dr. Copeland, I want to tap.
No, we only can have 2.
Oh, we
so-
can only have 2.
Yeah, he'd be happy. I mean, I'm happy to give him mine. If he wants to.
Can we
Julie?
put nominations of officers on the table? And then see if I know right now we have Mary Ann as president and Dr. Copeland as the treasurer, to see if they're interested or willing, and see who we might nominate for the other 2 positions and put those out there so we can see if the people nominated are interested, and then we can vote on that slate at our next meeting right away and then get rolling.
Good plan.
I agree with that. And that's part of what my point was, because
Right.
we talked last week about the bylaws, and that's why we got copies. We talked about the structure. That's why it was submitted to us so we could look at various things. And now at this point, I'm feeling just basically pretty much what Julie just said. Hey, everybody, the whole point of everybody sending in their blurb was to let us know whether or not they would be interested in
Right.
serving in some type of official capacity, and everybody submitted that. So we pretty much kind of know what's going on. We've gotten everybody's resume. We've gotten everybody's at least expressed desire to engage or not engage. And I think if we can at least put that on the agenda for the next time, as well as continue those who are working on the bylaws and all those other things. Let's just keep it moving. It's bottom
Right.
line.
That's the most important. I would also like to nominate Dick Kunert as vice president because of
Okay.
his background and absolutely the necessity for his expertise in the clinical model.
Sure, sounds
Yep.
good.
And my thought about the secretary's position is it's more than just note-taking. I think there's an important piece about helping us develop maybe our website and some of our supportive materials. Or maybe that's two different jobs. I'm not sure, but just throwing that out there.
I think it's going to be updating, you know, even if the county helps us develop the website, we're going to have constant input in updates as to, you know, information about mental health and substance abuse. If you look at McHenry's website, or many of the other mental health board websites, they're just a huge book of knowledge in terms of services available, or what, you know, when the RFPs go out, and make it as transparent as possible so that the public knows what's happening with our decision making. I think that's just critical. And I think, Danielle, you could help immensely with that, in terms of NAMI's, the information flowing through NAMI to the mental health board. That's kind of.
I'll second that.
Me too. So we're not voting on that, so we're gonna let everybody see how they feel about being in those positions, and if anybody else wants to put their hat in the ring for those positions, just let us know and send an email. Other than that, so we'll vote on that next meeting. But until, so how quick, so on this executive committee, we have Mary Ann, Dick, and Wendy. How quick do y'all think you can have bylaws drawn up so we could vote on something next meeting?
Well, I guess I'd like to get some feedback. I know Dick has sent me a couple of suggestions, and I'll just point out something that Paul raised that you should be aware of that I think is going to be a real issue for us to address. Right now, we're operating under two different statutes. One is the Mental Health Code, which is Chapter 405, Section 20 something. And that lays out, and essentially we're crafted under that authority. That's what the county board ordinance reflects. The referendum that was passed under the Counties Act, which is Chapter 55. And they added a new code section that allows sales tax to be used for mental health purposes. And after talking to Paul and basically banging my head against the wall for a week, I realized finally the law has to be changed, or the county needs to adopt an ordinance that gives the mental health board some authority over the sales tax revenue. Dr. Copeland, Kyle, I need to talk.
Well, I don't think it's the law has to be changed. What it is, we submit a budget to be used from the sales tax. We're still a 708 board where we could receive grants as a 708 board,
Right,
but the
right.
monies from the county board, from the tax, is like another income revenue that we will submit a budget for from the county.
Right. I just have concerns about, there's a gap. There's I think a fairly significant gap between the intent of the referendum and the creation of the 708 board and how those two are related. And I think it's our job to some extent to ask for clarification about that.
But-
So that
Yeah,
there isn't
Paul,
a
you may be
problem
able to help
down the
me
road.
better. Paul, you may be able to help us better, but I don't think we can get any authority over tax money. Am I correct? All authority has to be with the county board.
No, the
Yeah.
county board definitely has to approve our budget, okay? But the question is, does that money go,
No.
where does that money flow to? Is
Right.
it in the general fund?
Can I,
Or does it?
can
go
I,
to a
can I
line
add
item?
something? Can I add something?
Go ahead, Dick.
Okay, so the issue, folks, is right now, the state, after collecting the sales tax, sends it back to the county. And right now, the way it's established, as we understand it, it would go into the general fund. And that's exactly what all the voters in the county worried about, was the fact that mental health money would be lost and go into the general fund and we would never see anything. Now, the one thing that's there is that when the money comes from the state to the county, there has to be established a mental health fund, and that fund gets a code number. And that money is protected because it is in the resolution that a half cent of the sales tax to this county is to be used for mental health services. Okay, so we have that protection, but the issue becomes one of like, I mean, will that stand? Okay.
Will the funds be sequestered?
Right. Is that sufficient? Is that sufficient to guarantee that year after year, half cent of the sales tax will continue to be used for services for the mentally ill and the addicted? That's the piece that needs more resolution, legal resolution for how that works.
Does this have
Oh,
to?
what are
do
you,
with-
oh, I'm sorry. I can
Does
see
this have
Paul.
to do with the bylaws?
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
to a certain degree.
Well, I don't
Okay.
understand now, what's the technical issue at the county, of, to use Mary Ann's word, of sequestering the funds? What's the technical trail of that makes that obvious that it's happening?
Here, Paul would know that.
Yeah, so, and they do it for the public safety sales tax that was passed in 2002 or 2003 or whenever. The money comes to the county, it gets put in a fund with a code, like Dick said, I think, that money is from this tax, from the public safety tax or the mental health tax. And then it's designed, or it can only be spent for mental health purposes. But it's up to the county board ultimately to decide how it gets spent for mental health purposes. You'll submit your budget for how you want it to be spent for mental health purposes. And hope, it's up to the county board whether or not they're going to follow it dollar for dollar the way you submit it or not. But it is sequestered. It'll be sequestered in a separate fund with a code, public or mental health tax.
But Paul, you're saying like the public safety tax, and we all know that didn't
What
happen
happened
with
to
the
that,
public
right.
safety tax. So
Yeah.
that's, go ahead.
I think that it's, whether it happened or not, the public safety tax is only being used for public safety purposes, whether or not other money got shifted elsewhere. But I don't think that the public safety tax, I don't think that there's money from the public safety tax that's being spent for the health department, for instance.
But
The issue
technically,
here-
Paul,
the other issue,
there would be
Phil, is-
nothing, there wouldn't be anything that would prevent the county board from making its own decision about distribution if they felt it was in line with mental health purposes. Technically, they can do that,
They can, yeah, they can.
Right?
unless to the
And-
point of the voters and the mayor and others that this board ultimately became reconstituted like the airport board.
Right. And one of the big carrot, I guess, to listen to this board is because the mental health sales tax has a sunset provision in 6 years. And so if they blow off the mental health board, it's going to be hard to keep to renew that referendum in 6 years. So
Well, the other part that's in there, Bill, is we built this thing, when we built this thing, it was conceptually around mirroring the 708 board.
Mhm.
And that's where it fails, because with the 708 board, 708 boards clearly are sanctioned to take a whatever millage they have through property tax, and to develop a whole plan for a set of services using that money. Do they ultimately report the amount of money to the county board? And the answer is yes. But at the same time, there is no micromanagement from the standpoint of the county board to what the mental health board has decided. I mean, I worked for 15 years with a whole series of with 708 boards. Never once did I ever see micromanagement from a county board, onto what 708 boards were developing and how they budgeted their money, as long as they've met the legal requirements of what is called for under House Bill 708. So that's, I think, what we all ought to be advocates for, is for a similar relationship where, yes, we work within the county board, but clearly that the mental health board is sanctioned, to develop a system of services for the county and for county residents. That's what, at least in my mind, that's really what we ought to be holding out for.
Mhm.
I agree 100%.
Makes sense.
I mean, the board was constituted by the 708 statute, and that was made very clear to us by Marilyn, and also by one of the other assistants that actually wrote the resolution that the county board voted on. And so therefore, all of us represent exactly, a prototype written into that statute. We meet requirements for a mental health provider, for advocate, for, whatever's listed. So I think that, it's important that we take advantage, even though the 708 structure is difficult in some respects for us. I think that they really made it very clear to us that that's what the county board voted on. So hopefully we can take advantage of some of the other restrictions about how finances are spent, and what kind of authority that the mental health board would have in determining where the revenue is going to go. Of course, it's not without the approval of the county board. I mean, we're not working in isolation. We're not fooling ourselves. But I think it's really important that we have that partnership, and they respect our independence to some degree.
Well, I think the best start will be to establish reasonable bylaws, and also as a group develop sort of our vision, mission, short-term and longer-term goals and objectives. But we're doing this sort of with a short timeline, because money starts, at least, a few pennies will start flowing July 1. So we've got a relatively short period of time to get our initial structure up and
We
running.
wouldn't receive any funding until October, is what I understand.
It was October.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, even though the money is coming in.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so, but that still is a relatively short time in
It
terms
sure
of
is.
planning. And what I would like to even discuss once we get through determining, our officers, is I think we need a strategic planning process. And if we're doing it via Zoom, I think, we've got some excellent strategic planners, facilitator in our community. And I think we could break it up into 2-hour sessions and really crank out our vision and our mission after, our bylaws are, at least if we have a framework for our bylaws and we can further discuss and pass them. I think that's the next critical piece for us, because we all have to have input into that process. So I don't know. I've been thinking of it that way.
So back to Tim's question, when can we have a copy or a draft of the bylaws that we could vote on or that we could consider so that we could have a meeting soon so we can get going on?
Well, if we use the proposed stuff that I sent, could you just start marking things up and send them back to me?
If you want.
Or give me a phone call and let's talk. I know Dick and I have talked, like we changed a couple of things. Instead of saying agencies, we changed it to providers. I think we need to have a broad brush in terms of who we're seeking services from so that we get the best array of participants from our community and not limit it to,
So
Catholic
maybe
Charities and Lutheran Social Services, let's.
I thought we had heard that Mary Ann and Dick and you, Wendy, were going to function as a small group, not
Yeah.
outside the Public Meeting Act, and you were going to put a straw man copy out there that's clean, that then we react to that. That's what I
Yes.
thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. We're-
Okay.
we're-
When could
I'm
you
for
have
that.
that?
We've been working
We're
on
on our
it.
way.
Great.
Okay. Do you think, let's see, today is Tuesday. Do you think we can get that done maybe by the end of the week?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And then have a turnaround and maybe meet at the end of next week to get everything approved. That gives everybody a couple days, Monday and
Yes.
Tuesday, to get back to you with their input, and then you make those changes and bring it on that Friday or
Right.
Thursday or whenever.
That sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Oh, but I
So-
know Dr. Copeland teaches on Thursday.
But it doesn't
Right.
have to be Thursday. I'm just saying sometime next week, Wednesday or
Okay.
Friday or,
My
But then
question
we can
would be,
have
has
our
Paul
officers and our
heard anything that he has a problem with?
pardon me?
Right.
My question is to Paul Carpenter, did anything that we have said in our laying out of the issues, do you have any trouble with our conceptualization?
No, that sounds like a good plan.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry, Tim. Dr. Morris.
So do we want to set a meeting for next week?
So we have Friday the 1st. I know
Yeah,
you
I
said the
think
end of
the
next
further
week.
away, Friday is good because it gives us more days. What, it's
Right.
not good for you, Wendy?
No, Dr. Copeland.
Or
Oh.
we could go back to Tuesday the
It's
5th.
okay for him.
No, he said it's fine. Okay.
I'm fine.
Friday,
So
the-
May 1st?
Okay,
Mhm.
At what time?
2:00.
All
Does
right.
2 p.m. work? Jay, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's what I'm just looking at my phone. Make Friday at 2:00, same bat time, same bat station.
May 1st.
Is there any way that we can make, I know with Zoom, you can make it a regular meeting so that you don't have to keep sending out links?
Yeah, I didn't get a link. I don't know how I goofed that up.
And I don't know that I did either.
Oh, okay.
You can make them recurring.
Maybe I'll call,
That would have to be set up with
Dan,
Dan or Gus, because they have to record it live and put it on the YouTube, all
Right.
that kind of stuff. So they would have to set up. So
okay. Did you all get the email saying that the IT department is giving us our own, mental health whatever it is, and we're gonna have our own emails shortly?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well, I think it's just for the board members, not the advisory members.
Okay,
Oh, Wendy.
That's fine.
About that.
But that'll be a good place
Yeah,
to have.
just, right, because I don't think the advisory members would get their emails for it. I think that was the reasoning for it, but if we, Paul, do
We
you
have
think
to-
they,
I think we got to be careful on that because if we're participating in those emails, then the board business is out on emails that's not controlled. Isn't that the Hillary email scandal in a nutshell?
I don't
Yeah.
know why they could not be included.
okay, I'll check with Gus and have them included.
I mean, it's up to, or he might have a reason I don't know about.
Okay. All right,
What else was on the agenda?
The officers, the voting.
we weren't voting for officers today.
No. I mean I thought you were still talking about the next
Oh,
meeting.
so
with
next week
bylaws.
we got bylaws and officers.
Okay.
And minutes,
10
minutes
minutes.
from this meeting and minutes from last meeting.
Right.
All right,
Thanks, Julie.
And we should then add maybe a board retreat to establish the mission.
I would like to see that, for sure.
And I'd also want to propose, there are organizations out there that work on helping government entities function more efficiently. I know NIU has an organization. There's a regional planning council. It's starting to become clear to me that running this is going to be at least a part-time, if not a full-time job. So we may want to start looking for ways to get the work of the board done in the most efficient manner, reaching out to some of these organizations. If you have any ideas and.
Well, I'd like to add to that, Wendy, because I've talked to Wendy about this before. In talking to Scott Block and McHenry, from the day one when we receive any revenue, we're really going to have something in place. One of these organizations like RMAP, give an example, because CMAP in Chicago, and I know that McHenry uses IMAP. They automatically are able to provide them with the outcome measures. They're able to help them with RFPs, to create them. They are able to follow the progress of any of the provider recipients in terms of meeting outcomes, not at the end to find out they haven't, but all the measurements are in place all the way along. I think that is something that we really need to talk about it at our strategic planning to find out, what everyone really thinks about that. But I know just talking to, we're in our infancy, talking to Scott Block in McHenry, it was like overwhelming. They're so sophisticated and what they're able to, in terms of what they're able to measure, in terms of every dollar spent towards a mental health service, it's incredible. They're able to give feedback to the community, reassure them the money is being spent justly. So I think those kind of organizations that can help us with their analysis and their data gathering and, just really, just kind of guide us in that way. I'd love other people's input on that.
Yeah, Marianne, I have a question about that. Are we prohibited from using the referendum money to hire an administrator for the board?
no,
I don't know that we're prohibited. I mean, one thing I do know, that person cannot be our employee. the board was very clear to us when we went forward, that they're not interested in, the county is not interested in us building buildings with this money for capital, or are they interested in us employees? So like,
Well,
just to kind of further explain this, in McHenry, they have utilized funding. They have 10 staff members, and that's
Okay.
why I said
No.
I'm a little overwhelmed after talking.
my question, because my
Mary.
thought is, used R1, you're gonna have to pay them. Does it make more sense? if
Right,
somebody
but they would not be an employee. They would not be
It
an
could
employee.
be an
Yeah.
employee? Well, how do you get around paying an outside?
Excuse me, let me answer that. We, to my understanding, we can have an office and an employee. We just can't have our own facility. Like we can't have our own county Singer facility, but we can have an office with an administrative secretary and all that. And we can use that money to fund that office, but we just can't have a service facility.
Right, we can't provide
That's right.
service.
You cannot do direct service.
Right.
But what we could do,
What I'm suggesting though, because if you're talking about using an organization like R1 or something like that, we're
Mhm.
going to have to pay them. My question is, and I guess this is something to consider, does it make more sense to hire our own administrator who does just exactly what Mary Ann said, who stays on top of that, writes the referenda or the RFPs, tracks the outcomes and things like that?
I agree with you. What I am thinking about is that in the beginning, we probably won't need a full-time person. And so therefore, I'm, the getting into benefits and getting into all of that, that if you were to use an outside organization like Northern or like R1, they would just kind of rent you or lease you the number of hours that you need from that dedicated person that, and depending how this all develops, this definitely could lead to full-time. Yeah, Julie.
I'm not sure that we wouldn't want a full-time person from the start. If we have that ability to do that, all of these conversations that we're having are things that the employee, the administrator, or whatever the person that we call that person,
Uh-huh.
that's what they would be doing and bringing to the board for discussion and for approval.
right.
I firmly agree with that. I just didn't know the cost of it if you had full-time,
I think that
I just think that what,
our role is to employ somebody to do all this stuff that we're trying to do, that's not really the role of a board.
right, I agree with you.
I think it would be
Jump in,
important to
Danielle.
decide. I'm sorry.
It's a totally
Bill.
different
Oh,
subject.
Bill.
I just was gonna add, I think it would be important to decide what functions you want to be filled,
Absolutely.
either an in-house person or a subcontracted service, because
I agree.
it might be difficult to find one person who could do all of the functions that
I
R1
agree.
could do for you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mary Ann, I'm sorry. Can I chime in, guys? I'm sorry if I'm interrupting anybody. We're talking about McHenry County. According to their bylaws here, they did say something about, and on page 3, you can consult with other appropriate private and public agencies and development of local plans. Is that what we're trying to come with with this right now? Okay,
Yes.
because it does say, and for the most efficient delivery of mental health, developmental disabilities, yada, 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 yada. So, I mean, if that's what we're doing, then we can go out on the outside and do that.
Right,
Okay.
right.
All right, I want to make sure I'm on the same page. It's
Thank
just-
you. Mhm.
Danielle, say what you were gonna say.
It was totally a different subject, but I just
Oh.
wanted to put out, like, do we have to start thinking about like creating operating like policy and procedure as well?
Yes,
Like-
yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Which is what,
That's why we need someone.
right, we need someone to do that.
And to Julie's point, that's what an administrator could do, so
Right.
that I am not sure by contracting through someone, we're going to get what we are looking for. I think we want someone who's intricately and intimately involved with the board so that they carry out on behalf of the board what we need to be done. And I don't know by contracting with an outside organization that you're going to get that.
See, and I agree with you, Linda, because my first intuition was absolutely, that's where I was coming down on this. But after exploring and talking to other mental health boards, what I'm realizing is, and Julie said it, one person may not have the capacity to be able to do everything that we need he or she to do. And I'm not advertising for anything because I was so in my head, not thinking of an organization like RMAP at all. But the more that I look into what IMAP does in McHenry County, there is, you know, there's a lot of health information. There is a lot of data gathering, and also, you know, to be completely open about this, there is an individual that would kind of fit the bill. And I mean, I think to myself that he would be a great person for us to interview. He's been involved in, he's a social worker. He's been involved in mental health for, you know, 14 years. I think, you know, we have many people to bring to the table to look at this, but I just think we should consider all options at this point, you know.
And I think where I'm coming from, Marianne, is when you mentioned sort of real-time in-process assessment of the quality and the outcomes in progress, not at the end of whatever someone has been tasked to do. And that requires, I've just got a feeling that maybe there's some sophisticated data collection there and analysis of it that, again, I'm just trying to get my head around. We have one person who's an administrator. Are they capable of administering the day-to-day functions of this group, plus writing RFPs, plus assessing data in real time? Because I would also assume one of our roles is to, I guess I'll use the phrase, ride herd over whoever gets money to make sure they're doing it, have them have routine reporting to us at certain intervals. And so to me, that seems like a real important part of whatever a person or an organization would do for us.
Bill, I agree 100%. So many components.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't that person, the administrator, be the one to coordinate all that? Okay, we get information from them. And so this person can't do it all like you're all saying, but this person has to coordinate it. So the only issue with hiring or going to an organization without having somebody to be the point person, then we don't know, you know, we don't know, we're going to talk to this person for a little while at this organization for this lump of information. And then, you know, there's no coherency in that process. If you have an administrator to be able to coordinate all that administrator certainly can't necessarily write all the stuff or do all the data collection, but that administrator coordinates how we get it. And so without that administrator and the secretary, if we have that ability to do that, I would say, now that I know that, that's our number one priority after we get our bylaws and after really we get our bylaws, we get a person in place, then we do our strategic plan with that person involved in that strategic plan, and then we move forward and then we task that person.
I think that's smart too. Yeah.
Right, because the administrator is riding herd. We don't have the ability to ride herd.
No. Right. And that administrator rides herd on us as well to keep it focused on what we're supposed to do.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I'd say one of the things with bylaws is you need a job description.
Yeah.
If I'm a person interviewing, I want to know what you're all expecting me to do.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's something that could be brought. That may be, that may need to.
Yeah. Dick,
sorry.
What did you say?
Dick has something to say.
An impediment that we have to keep in mind, folks, and that is the sunset. We have 6 years. We have to keep that in the back of our head if we're talking to somebody about taking on this job. So I'm not saying it's, you know, it kills everything, but I'm just saying that we have to we have to just kind of be aware of that.
And I don't know what the hiring process is with the county, if we have to go through HR or do we? I don't
No,
know.
we don't have to do anything through the county. This is all with the mental health board. So we develop the bylaws and we develop the hiring process.
You know, I've talked to a couple of different people, Pam,
Clark
Clark
Reidenbach.
Reidenbach at NICNY, and I've talked to Michael Dunn at the Regional Planning Council. I talked to Paul Logley a little bit, just trying to get some ideas about, you know, how do we create something out of nothing, you know? What I would like to maybe think about, not next week, but in a couple of weeks, is invite some people in to talk to us as a board about this. You know, educate us a little bit so that we have more information. I feel like I don't know enough I wouldn't know who to begin to hire or what to add, what skills I'm looking for.
I think that person, I mean, we look at the other boards, the other mental health boards, and we find their job descriptions and
That's a good idea.
we bring, and I would propose that be on our agenda for next Friday.
Okay.
One thing I agree with that. But one thing you have to remember is that a lot of the mental health boards do not have an executive director. The board is a working board. So McHenry is probably the closest proximity example. And Scott Block is the executive director. So he, you know, he shared so much with us that, you know, I think that we can get his job description. And of course, it's much larger than we would anticipate needing
Right.
at this point in our development.
Does DeKalb have an executive director?
They do. They're another one that has.
Yeah.
That'd be, they're on a smaller scale than we are, but yes, they do.
Yeah. What would you think if Julie and I got some job descriptions together?
Fabulous.
That'd be great.
I love
Okay.
it.
Is that okay,
Great.
Julie?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we
Way
will
to
work,
volunteer your colleague.
yeah.
Sure, I would
We'll-
love to do that.
Okay, we'll do that.
And we'll
and then-
do
Yep,
a
and we'll get out,
secretary as well. Mhm.
perfect.
So,
And then we
so
can put
before
that
we
on-
before we close today, can we do a rundown again of like what we want on this agenda? To make
Yes.
sure that we're clear about the points, okay? So
Yes.
what I have right now is that we're going to return and we're going to talk about scope of service. We're going to talk about the structure of the board, and that'll have to do with actually electing an executive committee. We are going to then, are we going to talk about a planning meeting, or is that going to be held off to another time?
I'm sorry, I
Um,
missed that.
You cut out.
I said, are we going to be talking about a planning meeting, a strategy sessions? Is that going to be on there? And then
Yes.
also
At least
then
set a
a
date.
job description for a potential executive. Does
Yes.
that cover it?
Yes,
And
Bylaws,
approving the bylaw, correct?
bylaws.
in the bylaws.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I
And
think,
hopefully we can get the job description sent before the
Yes.
meeting so that we can review them.
yeah, we can do that. So it makes sense to me to approve the bylaws and then elect the executive committee.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, okay.
Okay. And Dr. Copeland, I'd like to talk to you a little bit and get some feedback from you about the bylaws and some of the legal issues, just so maybe you and I can talk.
Happy to do so.
That would be great. And Danielle, I know you did a lot of computer stuff. Maybe you could reach out to Gus Gentner and sort of talk to him about what having that web portal means. I saw that, oh God, one of our state representatives, whose name has fallen out of my head, was posting he had like a live Facebook thing this morning. Maurice West had posted about, what to do during with your mental health
Right.
while being locked in your house. And I thought we should be doing some of these things.
Right.
Maybe you could see what we need to do. We could just scavenge from the other mental health boards postings and stuff. I think we need to get visible. Just an idea, if you amenable to that.
Is somebody, question.
Go ahead,
So
Joe.
we're gonna have 4 voting items then next Friday,
Yes.
the officers, the bylaws, the job description, and then the planning. Is
Correct.
somebody gonna look into, or somebody, I think Mary Ann, you were talking about different people who could be good facilitators for that.
Right. I was
strategic planning?
actually going to just recommend Pam Clark Reidenbach because she does strategic planning and she is very knowledgeable about current mental health services and providers. And plus, I've been in the audience of her doing strategic planning. I think she'd be a great leader for us. I don't know what she charges. I don't know any of that. So I would have to, get that information. If you want me to get that or explore that possibility with her, if I have a commitment, if we need a vote from the board on that, I don't know. It wasn't on the agenda. I don't know if we can vote on it.
I think we can consensus that you look into that because it's going to be on our board agenda next Friday. And
Okay.
we could make it a voting item. I'm comfortable if you bring some information about her and about.
Yeah, well, I'll have her send me all her bio in terms of the strategic planning that she's done and, it's in her background. So I'll do that and I'll send it to all the board members.
Okay.
And what is, I know NICME is something about not-for-profit executives, but What's
It's
the-
Northern Illinois Center for Nonprofit Excellence. And it's
So-
located right now it's located at Northern. It used to be at Rockford College, but it now it's a part of Northern Illinois University.
I think she'd be awesome, but let's
Me
see
too.
what she would do.
I'll reach out to her.
All right. Is there any other matter? Dr. Copeland.
If I could make a couple of recommendations. Dick, you did mention that we'd have the approval of minutes of previous meetings on next week's agenda. too.
Right.
Right.
Correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
Thank you. So I'm wondering, just for the sake of meeting efficiency, if there's a way that we could have like I'm just making a recommendation, there might be a better way to do this. That you asked at the beginning for everybody to put their thing on mute and then raise their hands. That doesn't seem to be working. Me and Paul and Danielle had ours on mute all the time. Most everybody else, and Paul, most everybody else didn't. So I'm wondering if there's a way, well, I know there's a way. I'm just suggesting that this might be a way, but there might be a better way. There is a way that you can have a co-host for the meetings, and the co-host would be responsible for muting and unmuting people, because you said raise your hands, but many times we were raising our hands and your head was down and you couldn't see people raising their hands. But if there was somebody who would be designated, one of us be designated as a co-host, we can pick on people and all that kind of stuff so that we can make sure that, number one, every voice is heard and that every voice is heard. If that makes sense. Yeah, and again, there might be a better way to do that. I don't know. But right now, I never did. I think I heard something from Jay. Danielle finally said something, but everybody else seemed to have their own ongoing conversation, and it was sort of hard to break in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can tell I'm in the process of getting a camera. Since we've got a COVID virus epidemic, everybody seems to want one now, and they're in short supply.
I agree with Dr. Copeland.
I do too. Do you want, is that, are you saying that should be one of us? Is that what you're saying?
Go ahead, Danielle.
There's do you see at the bottom of your screens, most of you, those reactions? And you can put a little hand or a little thumb.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's how we can direct to people.
it is a raised hand, but I was missing you all, half of you all, because my screen only showed half of the people and I kept having to go back and forth between the toggle between people. And so I was missing a lot. But now I got everybody up here now, so I can see a lot better.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? And entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, are we going to have a co-host? Are we gonna do that process or?
That's I can see if IT could set that up, because they will have to set it up because they're the host of the meeting. So generally the host usually does it. And so I'll see what who was on here with us, Dan. So next time, Dan, can we create a co-host?
Yeah, we can absolutely do co-hosts, or what we could do as well is create a Zoom account for whoever wants to be the host in general. That way, if you want to create the reoccurring meetings and things like that, you'll kind of have that in your control. So we can accommodate either of those things, or probably anything else you want to come up with.
All right, Marianne.
I just want to make a comment that what I think would be, given what Tim explained right now, that he only had vision of half of us today because of computer difficulty in the beginning. I would think now that Dr. Copeland brought this to our attention, that we can be better behaved next time. And that I think, Bill.
I'm interrupting you, but
No, right ahead.
I've been helping our 7-year-old first grader grandson with his Zoom meetings with his Marshall Elementary School teacher. And she is the host, and she controls muting everyone. And then she is the one who releases the mute to allow people to speak. And I couldn't agree with Ed more. This is really chaotic to some degree. And I don't know I don't know enough about Zoom to know, but I thought that was the function of the host, to be able to mute everybody and then
That's
release
right.
the mute.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so we'll develop that for next meeting. It's just like Dan said, he could give us those capabilities. We just have to establish who wants to host it. I could host it. Since I was supposed to been doing it in the first place, I just only had half the participants on my screen, so I couldn't see. But if they give me the ability to mute and unmute, I'll be willing to do it.
Great.
Terrific.
Sounds good.
So I move that we adjourn.
Second.
So it's been motion and second that we adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or wave your hand if you
Aye.
need it.
Aye.
All right, so we're now adjourned. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.